everyone, welcome to our very first UKC podcast. Today we have here our very special guest, Aleena Ismail, with us here today. She will be sharing on her academic journey to pursuing the UK bar course.
Hi everyone, I'm Aleena Ismail. I did the UK bar LLM with specialisms in international dispute resolution and international commercial trade at City University of London. And I took an LLB before that as well. It was a UK transfer degree and I took it at Queen's University of Belfast. So yeah, I'm very excited to be here today so that we can hopefully answer a lot of questions that might give a lot of insight for students.
Without further ado, let's just dive into the questions, right? So you've mentioned, you're from the UKT program and you went to QUB, Queen's University Belfast, to do your final year.
Yeah.
So maybe we just touch a little bit on that, when you're heading to the UK, your impression and your assumptions about the UK bar course, before starting, and how did that compare to reality?
Yeah, of course. So that's a great question because I think everyone thinks that when you go from the LLB, you have to take the bar, you have to take the CLP or something. But of course, it's a natural progression. I think it's good to understand first the standards that we're talking about.
Okay.
They're two very different courses. LLB is obviously degree level, and with the bar, that is a professional certification.
Yeah.
So for something that's that of high standards, obviously the way of teaching, the assessments, all those will be very different as well. I think something I noted here is that you're getting into tertiary level, how you're going to be a lawyer to be able to speak in court.
To deliver in court and things
Correct.
like that. Yeah.
So unlike with the LLB, that's something very theoretical. And of course, you're going to learn more about just the general overview of the law.
Would you say it's more academic and versus practicality?
I could say to some extent with the LLB, I found that to be heavily academic. The bar is more of a training for you to be a barrister.
Okay.
So I think that's what I expected, and obviously that was really what it was.
Okay,
that was
that's
the
good.
reality of what it was.
So not too different from what you were expecting then?
Not too different, but of course the standards was something that I was very wow.
Okay, so in terms of standards, what do you mean? Is it assessment-wise or, marking scheme, or what is the standards like?
I think just entirely that it is a course for legal practice. Okay. So you are being assessed in how you are basically going to have practical skills for being a lawyer.
Okay.
That's something that's very different from the UKT or the LLB in general. So I guess going into teaching, you are definitely going to have more independent learning in the bar.
Okay.
In UKT, I feel I had that, and I'm glad that with the LLB, I was able to have that prep before going to the bar, because I think understanding the way that the education is in the UK is one thing.
Yeah.
And then also when you're going to take a tertiary level or a professional certification there, that's something that we obviously is going to be very different.
So we do have questions, some students will ask us, what is what are the classmates like? What, in terms of diversity, you're in QUB. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think firstly, with UKT specifically, if you're coming from a Malaysian university or something like that, maybe you're going to be very used to a bigger classroom, right?
Yes.
With your peers. Of course, we have diversity as well, but our own Malaysian diversity is our own Malaysian diversity, which we love.
Satu Malaysia.
Yeah, we Satu Malaysia about. But of course, in the UK, you're going to have diversity in ways that are more international, right? So I think everyone is from all around the world is coming to this specific institution.
Could you name a few countries?
I mean, China, India. I had a lot of Indian classmates.
Okay.
I had a lot of Pakistani classmates. Of course, a lot of locals.
Yes.
I mean, specifically with the bar course as well. Obviously, they want to be barristers, right? So, a lot of locals, but surprisingly, a lot of other Commonwealth jurisdictions. A lot of them come to the UK, which makes sense because.
Would you say there were a lot of Malaysians in your class as well?
Of course, I think Malaysians really outran the classmates actually. But fortunately, in my class for the bar, at least, I had a good mix of people, even
That's
though it
good.
was a smaller group. With UKT, I guess when I was in LLB or something, it's a bigger classroom. So obviously you'll have
More diversity,
people,
yes,
yeah,
more
a lot
people.
more Malaysians.
Oh,
So yeah,
okay.
that's something. The small groups in the bar is something I would highlight. Yeah.
This is something that people would worry, oh, if I want to take up doing a law degree in the UK, would English, be an issue, for them? Yeah. And if it is, how did you overcome it? Or do you find it challenging?
I think, especially if you go in ahead and do the LLB,
Yeah.
that's obviously already a good prep for you, English speaking wise, to do the bar later on. But understanding that with the bar, it's advocacy, speaking, a lot of interpersonal skills that are being taught. So, of course, spoken English is definitely required. And I don't think that's too much of a problem if, of course, before that, you will have to take your IELTS, some people have to do that,
Yeah,
and it depends on the institution, of course. But when you go through that process itself, I think they will also highlight to you these are their standards for why you can come to the course or not. So I don't think people should focus
Not
too much of it.
Yeah.
Like if you have good skills,
communication
skills in English, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
And if anything, you are at an institution that's going to help you
to improve on that.
On that professionally.
In terms of accent.
Maybe if you refer to the accent, in terms of teachings, when I was in Belfast, that was definitely something I had to get used to a bit more, but nothing I couldn't overcome. I think it took a bit.
Was it very heavy accent or do you go up oh teacher, could you just slow it down?
Teacher, please slow down. No lah, I didn't really do that. But also, let's say if I didn't want to disrupt the class, but I took the time out to okay, there was this section that I didn't really understand what my teacher was saying, what they were saying. So maybe I'll highlight that later after class or something, or even halfway. Don't. I think something about the UK is they're so open for you to approach them. Okay. And our Malaysians are not really used to that, right?
Yeah,
that kind of approach.
Correct. I think we're a bit more
conservative,
reserved, right? We're shy.
We're shy.
We don't want to go up to teacher.
Exactly.
Oh my God, are we going to get into trouble if we ask this kind of question? But I think it's not like that in the UK. They're more open.
Exactly. Yeah? They're more open. So if you do have a language barrier, please ask. Don't sit down in silence and then go I have no idea what he was saying. So that would be a problem.
Yeah, I think that, thank you. I mean, that would be very encouraging. I mean, something that we can encourage students out there. If you're not confident with your English or things like that, don't worry, right? We'll definitely have support from your lecturers how you did, right? Okay, yeah, let's move on. Okay, so you mentioned you did your LLM, right? Masters in Law.
Yes.
So, why did you choose to pursue the LLM after your UKT degree? Any reason, any specific reason behind it?
I think it's also worth mentioning at this stage of my life, I had already worked a bit. I had a bit more practical experience in Malaysia already. And I had already decided that, law is for me and I want to do this. So I knew roughly what my specialisms had to be. And at this point of my life, I needed to make sure that I was getting the professional cert as well. So it's worth saying that the LLM that I'm talking in question is the bar LLM. Yes. Because the bar LLM basically, it would encapsulate what you've learned from the bar to apply it in your LLM. So let's say you want to do a dissertation or you want to do a clinical legal experience. I chose the clinical legal experience because I actually also wanted that pro bono working experience from the UK. I mean, they're a pioneer in law. I would love to know how they're working there.
And how was the experience there?
Oh, I loved it. It was so good, but at the same time, it was challenging. So, this pro bono experience was really, I think it really complemented my bar well. Okay. And I chose this by making sure that I can also manage around it.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. So I chose the reflective report. So you have a chance, and depending on your institutions, you can choose between a dissertation or reflective report of the work you've done during your pro bono and the NGOs that you're working with. So that was
okay.
one reason why I chose the LLM, because I did want to apply that bar practical
Practicality into it.
correct. And also I can speak, I guess, on the city side
Yeah.
of things. I genuinely wanted to have that chance at a specialism, and with the specialism with the bar, you're not only specializing in those specific
Areas
modules.
Modules.
You're also looking at it on a practical level. Yeah, because it's the bar LLM with specialisms. So I hope that breaks it down. But basically, yeah, the additional specialisms in that LLM was definitely what motivated me. And yeah, you get to dive into an area better. If you already know why you like this area of law, I think it's a good opportunity for you to already do that.
Okay, just for like the benefit for students watching this. So basically, this is together with your bar course, correct? And it is something additional to it. The LM is like an on top qualification, correct? Okay. So in that aspect, do you do the bar first, or do you do the LM first, or is it in between? How do you manage that? Like,
it's in between.
It's in between.
Yeah. So it's basically, I mean, at least in City, I wonder how, I think it's still the same. It is still the same. The bar, basically, you start with the bar first.
Okay.
And then in around October time, you start in September.
Start in September. Okay.
And around October time, they're like, haha, time to introduce some elements of the LLM. And then by this time, you would have already applied for, I'm speaking on the pro bono side. You would have already applied for the organizations that you want.
In October?
I think way before that.
Way before that?
Way before that. Because in October, everything has to be settled already.
So you start your bar course in September, correct?
Yeah.
And then after that, you start applying your whichever pro bono program that you want. Even before that?
The application is before that, because by October, you need to already start getting
know what you're doing already.
Correct. Okay. So this is the time where you decide on the dissertation or the reflective portfolio.
Which you did?
I did the reflective portfolio. And during this time as well, you are basically researching on the skills that you would need for this practical experience, which is great, because the university is basically setting you up right before you they
kind of dive into
you
it.
actually dive into the work. Correct. So I found that really helpful, because they're not only teaching you okay, go, soar, free, roam, work. They're teaching you the hard and soft skills that you most likely need before you start even doing that. And so it's good that you go for those sessions, even though it seems very generic. It's about legal research. Go, because your organization might genuinely need you to do a lot of legal research. So that's something that I found very rewarding as well. So in terms of, you mentioned how did my week
like your workload, because it sounds like it's a lot to do. So from the prep work, you've already signed yourself up for this. There's the bar, there's the LM program, and then so you're doing all this in 1 year.
Yes.
Right? In 1 year. So how do you manage that? The workload, your schedule, how is it like?
No, it's difficult, I'm not going to lie. But I think the university support is very important. Having your support system is very important. But if you follow the program religiously, you follow it, you follow what the university has intended for you, the university is saying, go for this soft skill, go for this introduction to LLM, or go for this, that is going to give you at least some sort of idea,
like a heads up
on how it's going to be like. And also, you have personal tutors. You do have people to reach out to and say that I'm struggling a little bit with this area. How can I catch up? So there's always support for you there. And of course, yeah, I think going back to the fact that the workload, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to be seeing a full week of work. So
It sounds heavy.
it is heavy. It is heavy. And I guess it's different because with the bar itself, that's about only 120 credits. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's 120 credits. But with the specialisms and the masters, that puts your bar LLM specialism into 180 credits. That's already 60 extra
Another
credits
additional 60 credits.
that you need to look into and that you need to get in order to get your certification. Yeah.
Would that also add to your hours?
So that's your hours. More credits, more hours.
More credits, more hours.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I guess that would be what I would highlight. It's just that knowing which organization you want to apply to if you're going for pro bono is obviously a really good thing. And if you're choosing the masters, don't only just blatantly do it for the sake of doing it, because if you choose the dissertation, you generally should find something that you're passionate about to write about. It makes the hours better.
More worth it.
You know,
Yes,
more worth it because
correct.
you like it and you're passionate about it. So yeah, that's what I would say for the LLM.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing. So yes, you'll know if you're looking to do your bar with LLM, so make sure that you know what you're passionate for, right?
Yeah.
What advice would you give to future UKT students who is considering doing the UK bar program?
I would say it sounds very cliche, but do your research and make sure that you are passionate about it, that you can commit to it, of course, because the LLB is something, but the bar is something else. And though it may seem very easy for you to get into it, it's good to be committed to it throughout. So you need to tell yourself that I'm going to go there and I'm going to finish it. Just finish what you started.
Yeah.
Don't give up. And yeah, go for a lot more fairs or speak to the counselors from the university, because I found that to be really helpful for me in doing my research. So I think when you're doing your research for universities, one thing, understand how they assess, understand how they teach.
Method.
Correct.
Yeah.
And with the LLM, you want to know who you're working with as well, no? Because you want to know your professors, you want to know who in this university is really, really expert in this area. You want their input in your work. So I would say do your research and be more engaging.
Yeah. Don't be reserved or shy.
Don't be too shy. I mean, you can be shy, but put some initiative to research what you genuinely want.
So on that note, what should they be aware of, or in terms of preparation, doing your research, something on top of that, what would you say? What would you say?
In terms of, for example?
An additional, what should they be aware of? Yeah, and what should they be prepared for? I mean, on top of all the research that they do, speak to university, is there anything else that you like to highlight? Yeah.
I think another thing is maybe before you start your bar, something you could also do is see whether legal practice and litigation is something you like. Maybe that could be a good start, because I think especially you guys would know about the SQE and
yes,
stuff.
there is
the solicitor route. So if you are really passionate about more corporate, more solicitor style work, it would be wise to consider that route instead, because I think something that a lot of us Malaysians are so used to is the bar. But there are other routes, and of course their way of qualifying back in Malaysia may be slightly different. It's worth considering before you put the hours, the blood, the sweat, the tears into the bar. I think that's fair enough to think about.
It's great. Thank you for that. So there you have it. I guess that's all for now, for today at least. No, stay tuned for the next one where we go deeper into her experience as a UK bar student.